Hey guys, my name is Tara and I'm a primary care network manager, and welcome back to our primary care network management channel. So in today's video, I wanted to discuss the role and the partnership between the PCN manager and the practice managers within your primary care network. I've been asked to speak about this a while, and I did record a podcast with Ben Gowland and some other practice managers on this topic. I will put that in the link below, but I will also share some more of my thoughts around this ever so important relationship. So based on my experience of being a primary care network manager, I think the relationship between the practice manager and the PCN manager is absolutely crucial. And I have been on both sides. I have got networks where the relationship I have with the PMs is amazing, it's excellent. And I've also been at the other end of the spectrum, and it was horrible. It was really, really horrible. And if any of you have seen me do this presentation before, I start with saying there's a slide that says like the disaster. And that disaster was that I was hired with no input from the rest of the PCN management team. So it's just the CD that wanted a manager, and that person went full steam ahead. And I was under the assumption that all of the network was on board with this decision, but that wasn't necessarily the case. I was hired for a role, but they were not clear on what they wanted me to do. I didn't understand the role of a practice manager. I'd never worked in general practice before, and I didn't really, I couldn't appreciate their life at all. So I think me going in and having that huge blind spot put me at a really big disadvantage. There was no induction. It was just like, off you go, crack on. The PCN and the practices felt very separate. So it felt like the practices were on one side and then the PCN was on the other side. So that was independent of me. I'd kind of walked into a situation where, there wasn't clarity. There was no vision for the network. They operated as two very separate entities. And in some instances that works. In this instance, it did cause real tensions. And it was clear after a couple of weeks, I wasn't wanted. It was made absolutely clear that why do we need a manager? That manager's on like this. I was on more than some people. So that was a really big issue, which was made apparent to me, and it was my fault. It was cold. I said it was a cold, frosty, lonely place, and I had been there twice. And I vow never to be there again. So in those instances, what happened in the end? I just left. I just thought, you know what, I don't need this. I left, and it's very in the early stages of my career, and I've got those battle scars to prove it, but also it was a hard, but one of a lesson that I needed to learn. I hope other people don't need to learn this, but there are lots of lessons. And I think the first lesson I would share to a clinical director is do not hire your manager in isolation. Okay, it's not fair to bring that manager in and be expected to run a network where the other members of the other practices have not had a say in that decision-making process. It's a really, really important role, and you want to make sure you've got buy-in. Otherwise, your manager is going to be left to kind of fight and advocate for themselves and, feel like the weight is on their shoulders to demonstrate their worth, because the other networks just weren't part of the decision-making process. And if not all of your networks want a manager, but you go ahead anyway, it's your responsibility to support your manager. Don't just leave them high and dry. So the recruitment process is so important. You want buy-in from the beginning. You want to understand, what do we want our primary care network manager to do? And there are some key things that all managers will do or have oversight of. And typically a manager will be responsible or have oversight for the finance, HR, business planning, day-to-day operations, practice communications and engagement. So there's a lot wrapped up in there, but your manager is responsible for the day-to-day running of your network, making sure people are clear on what is going on, why it's happening. They're there to troubleshoot issues. They're there to proactively plan, and they should be the glue, part of the glue, maybe not all of the glue, but a big dollop of glue holding your network together. And they cannot do that successfully if they do not have the support of the practice managers around them. So to summarize, make sure you have buy-in from the start regarding your role. Number 2, make sure you know what you want your manager to do and be in consultation with your practice managers. Number 3, if your manager does not have general practice experience, make sure that they spend time with your practice managers. I won't mention her name, but I say to somebody, I ended up having the pleasure of working with my harshest critic, who turned into one of my best teachers. And I'll never forget, she was like, Tara, do you know how many emails I get? And I was like, no. She was like, I've got about 500. And you're sending me these emails. They're not clear. I don't know what you want me to do. And I just feel like you're giving me more work. And I was like, can I come in and can we talk about this? And I went into her practice. I sat down next to her and she said, Tara, look at my email. And I was like, oh, sugar, like I was selfishly focused on me and my role and what I needed to do. And I hadn't really been appreciative of the practice manager's role and all of the queries and requests that they get. And it was only in that moment I was like, oh, do you know what? I've got this wrong. And from that moment, our relationship went from like being in the toilet to it being a really good working relationship of friendship. And before implementing things, or when I had ideas or when the network had ideas, I would go to the PMs. We set up a PM meeting. You need to have a PM meeting, a PM forum to say, what do you need? What would make your life easier? What are the challenges? We've got this idea, like, help me pick it apart. Like, what would be all the things that could go wrong with this? What could be all the things that go right with this? They are your sounding board for better or worse. And if you get your managers on board, they will just run with it. They make it happen. It's amazing. And I can say, I'm currently working with a lady called Hannah Glide. She's like our PM rep. She's fantastic. She's so helpful. We meet every Friday and we have a PM meeting because she wants to make sure, Tara, we want to make sure it's not just our idea. We want to make sure all of the network managers are involved. Not everybody is going to like the decision, but one of the things that you can absolutely ensure that happens is everybody has been consulted. And you can ask them, is this helpful? Would this make your life easier? And really, you need your managers. Otherwise, you'll be like out in the cold. So meet with your managers, ask them, invite them for critique. It makes it easier to take when they give it to you. So say, what am I missing? Where have I got this wrong? And a really important lesson that Ben Gowland, I call him like Mr. PCN, gave me, and if you know me, you know I say this all the time. He said to me, Tara, if it's a choice, emailing them and phoning them, phone them. If it's a choice between phoning them and meeting them, meet them. That's changed a little bit because of COVID. But if it's a choice between emailing me and then sending them a WhatsApp message, I'm going to send them a WhatsApp message. You don't want all of your communications to be via email. You are inviting lots of room for misinterpretation. I can quickly send Hannah a voice note, and these are short voice notes. I'm not sending her like 10-minute voice note. We can jump on a call quickly. She's really responsive. I'm really responsive. And sometimes we both have to just, this isn't a priority. Can I pick this up later? And we've just got a really good working relationship. But we've both had to work at it. We've both had to say, well, actually, Hannah's really busy. She doesn't want this job. I don't want her job. Like, we're on the same team. How can we make this work? And that is something I really also want you to take away from this. It's like, we're on the same team. The manager doesn't, well, I believe the manager doesn't come in like and sit on top of the managers. Like, no way, no way. Like, it's a flat structure. Your practice manager is there to lead and manage their practice. The primary care network manager is there to facilitate the consensus of the primary care network and lead the day-to-day operations of the primary care network. And that typically cannot happen if you do not have a good working relationship with your practice managers. You can do it, but it is better when you have got the buy-in and support from your practice managers. When you need somebody to access the system, or you just need to double check an audit, or if you just want, like a quick decision on something, I go to the PMs. The PMs, in my view, they call the shots, even if they say that they don't, they do. So if you are a PCN manager and you are having a tough time because you feel like you have not built a good rapport with your managers, I have been there. It's not uncommon. This is what my advice would be: to meet with them. So if you are a primary care network manager and you are struggling to build an effective working relationship with your practice managers, in the past, I have met with the managers, and if I've done something wrong, I will acknowledge that. I'll hold my hands up and say, I'm sorry, apologize. Like, if you need to, if there has been an error, if there's been a miscommunication, if actually on reflection you think maybe maybe my communications aren't clear, or maybe I don't appreciate their role, or maybe I am giving them more work. Be honest and go into that meeting with the best of intentions on asking them, how can we make this work? Because I love my job. I want to work with you. I want to work with this network. I want the network to be the best that it can be. And I believe that we can make this work. There's a role for both the PCM manager and the practice managers. And I would, that's my approach. I'd also discuss this with my clinical director, and, it'd be good if you could go together versus the manager doing it all by themselves. In my instance, I did it all by myself. It would have been nice for my CD to come with me, but they didn't. But I managed to sort it. So I would meet with your managers. I would be really clear. I'd ask them, how do you want me to communicate with you? So ask them, is it by email? Is it by WhatsApp? Do you need an extra meeting? Do you need less meetings? This video hopefully is coming out at a good time. It's the start of a new financial year, but it's never too late. It's never too late. Hopefully it's not too late. To re-establish and go back to basics. So how do we want to communicate moving forwards? What has worked well in the past, and where could we improve? Okay. I'm like a broken record. I always say what has been working well, what could be improved. I would also ask a question like, what could I do to make your life easier? Because I do believe the PCN manager's role is there to help practices. So it doesn't mean I'm at their beck and call, but what could I do in regards to my communications, in regards to how we mobilise projects, in regards to how we consult with practices, or disseminate communication? Like, what would make your life easier? And in one of our networks, it's like, Tara, we just use WhatsApp. Use WhatsApp for short messages, long messages for like email, and just duplicate it. Don't worry about sending too many messages, because inevitably some people like WhatsApp, some people like email, some people are happy with just like a meeting invitation. Like, do it all, and then all bases are covered. So just things like that. That's what I mean by what little things can we do to make your lives easier in practice. The other thing is just do what you said that you were going to do. If you agree these things, write it down, and you have to do them. You have to build back that trust and honour your word. It's really, really important. Another thing which both parties need to bring to the table is just an appreciation of each other's different roles and experiences that have brought you guys together. So neither the practice manager is not better than the PCN manager. The PCN manager is not better than the practice manager. I think the hierarchy is flat. The roles are different. The roles are complementary, but the roles are different. So the next kind of topic is sensitive because it's around salary. And I absolutely 100% get it when you know the salary of a colleague and you think then A, they're not worth it, or B, they're on more than you and you feel like you could do that job. And I stand here as an employer. I have to manage that tension within my own organisation. I've had to do that in the past. And also, I know peers that are on more than me, and they charge more than me. And unfortunately, it's just life. It just happens. There will always be somebody on more than you. And the only thing I can say is that it's not the PCN manager's fault. It's that they shouldn't bear the brunt of that. They're coming in, the last person, when you're going for a job, you have more negotiation power. PCN managers and practice managers, it's hard to find experienced practice PCN managers that want to do the job, that can come in, that can hit the ground running, that have got that experience. And in order to entice them into what is a difficult role, salary, flexibility, and professional development opportunities are all up for grabs and all up for negotiation when you're trying to secure the role. I get the frustration. There is a real variation in primary care network management salaries that I'm aware of, and I'm sure it's the same with practice management salaries. But the frustration should not be channeled at the employee of the worker. It's not their fault. They've not done anything wrong. So I don't have the answer for that. I don't think, and I know that some networks where the managers have gone, you cannot employ a manager that's on more than me, and they don't have a manager, and that's what they want. So there is a choice. You don't have to have a manager. There is a choice that all networks have to make. And this is the role of your leadership and management team. Okay, what does good look like? It's not all doom and gloom. What does good look like? When we work as a team. So when I meet regularly with my practice manager representative and the practice managers all within the network to understand what do we want to collectively do, and we understand each other's roles. So Hannah may do X, I'll be responsible for Y, Julie will do Z. So just being really clear, making sure we leave the meeting with a plan and names against particular activities. We bring different skill sets. We don't need 10 Taras, we don't need 10 Hannahs, we don't need 10 Jades. We need a good, diverse, professional group coming together that all see things slightly differently, and our differences and our diversity of thought and experience helps create a really solid approach. We try to be as clear as possible, and sometimes that is tricky when we may not feel clear, but we try to aim for clarity, and we're not frightened to say, so what are we doing? Why are we doing this? Who is doing X? So we really want to drive for clarity all of the time. We appreciate the context that we're working with, and the context is really challenging. It's really busy. There's lots of competing priorities. There isn't enough workforce. It's really challenging. The news is blasting out crap all of the time. So we understand that the context that we're working with is challenging. Both roles, the practice manager and the PCN network manager role, that is challenging. We're on the same team and we want the same outcome. The other thing is really, really important to me is that we're kind in our interactions. I feel like in one network, I would verge on, I don't want to, maybe it is bullying. They were so rude, so unprofessional. And there is a way to communicate without just being flat out rude and unprofessional. There absolutely is. So be kind in our communications, and also knowing that sometimes when you have days where you're a little bit short or there may be something going on at home, is acknowledging, do you know what, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to be a little bit offish or be a bit short in my interaction. It's a busy day. So sometimes emotions get in the way, but just going back to that person or going back to that group and just saying, look, that wasn't my intention. Just being kind, being courteous and kind. And that follows on from being forgiving of other people's mistakes. Like sometimes we get it wrong because we're human. So sometimes I think that when relationships aren't good, we're looking for mistakes. We're looking for evidence to say, I don't like that because they've done X, Y, and Z. And that puts tremendous stress under the person, which probably results in even more mistakes. So just being kind, forgive, we get it wrong. And unless you are superhuman and you've never made a mistake, you can skip this point. But most of us have made a mistake. I make mistakes all of the time. And I think that there is genuine mistakes. And if there's a competency issue, that's different. But I think we should be forgiving of people's mistakes. Let's not make assumptions. Let's ask the question. Really, really important. Seek clarification. We meet meaningfully, or we meaningfully meet. Don't have meetings for the sake of meetings. Sometimes you might just need to check in, but just be intentional when you need to meet, when it can be a WhatsApp conversation, but yeah, just be intentional. We don't want to keep pulling people to unnecessary meetings, and create a plan. Work to a plan. Okay, so in short, the practice manager and PCN management relationship is hugely important. I do not believe there is a hierarchy in the roles. There may be some tensions around salary, but that's not of the fault of the practice manager or either the PCN manager. So those frustrations should not be taken out on each other. Both roles are complementary. We're on the same team, but we just bring a slightly different flavour. The PCN manager should really make the effort to understand practice life. And I also think practice managers should make the effort to understand what, leading the PCN is like, and the complexities, and trying to create a consensus. And that just comes out in just general conversations, like when you're trying to facilitate a new contract and you've got 4 practices that want one thing and you've got one practice that wants another thing. It's like, I know we go with majority rules for most of the time, but it's really challenging. Like, what would you do if you were me, if you had 4 practices saying one thing and you had one practice saying one thing, and the practice and the PCN governance says we're going to follow majority rules? And just trying to talk through them, just so they've got an appreciation. It's not about them going, oh, Tara, it's okay, you've got such a tough job. It's not about that. It's just helping other people to walk in your shoes. And it's really important that we walk in other people's shoes. Okay, that's teamwork, that's collaboration. And if you think about your other collaborative endeavours and how you've worked collaboratively with other organisations, why were you able to do that? What is it about those communications, or how those relationships have evolved and developed? What about those relationships, or what communication channels did you use? Like, try to work out, we can work collaboratively, and what are the special ingredients we need in our network to make that happen? And that extends beyond the PCN manager and practice manager. But I think the analogy can be applied. So I would look outside and think, okay, what does this network need? What mistakes do we need to just knock on the head? Or what are the things that are not working? And how can we move forwards? Because I think everybody can appreciate it's miserable and so upsetting and so stressful to feel not valued in your role and to feel like you're not wanted in your role. That is horrible. It really, really is. So I'm going to stop talking. I hope this is helpful. And we have got a whole repository of primary care network management resources that you can find on this YouTube channel and also in our blog. And I will leave the links below. Thank you.